Hey guys, welcome back to more AFK Arena. In today's video, we're going to be doing the top 5 endgame heroes, but this time, we're going to be doing it without Celestials or Hypogeans. I apologize for my last video on it. There was a bit of confusion. I was just doing, if you want to see that link in the description, I was just doing the top 5 heroes. Overall, they happen to be majority Celestials and Hypogeans, but hey, that's the way these games are designed. The harder heroes to get are always going to be the better ones. So I apologize to anyone who thought that video wasn't really for them. Really, I was just trying to display what the endgame meta looked like. But because I thought there's credit to that, we should actually look at the heroes that people are more likely to get. We're going to be doing this video without those Celestials or Hypogeans, so hopefully there's something in here that you guys can find out. But the other thing is, with that last video, if you are looking at the Celestials, Hypogeans end game, eventually you're going to start stargazing, so be sure to remember when you're stargazing, I'd be looking at those guys because they're just harder to get, so they're more value to stargaze when the rates become the same on the stargaze. So let's get into this video. So we're going to kick it off with a few honorable mentions. I'm going to do 2. There's going to be a lot of heroes that I know people are going to leave in the comments. I apologize if I don't cover a hero that you think is best, but be sure to leave it in the comments so the discussion can be had, because in the end I could only choose 5 and I'm going to give 2 honorable mentions of ones that I really think are up there, but I just couldn't put on the list because we only had 5. So Lika is that first one. Basically, Lika is all about that haste buff at the start. When we go test hero, the speed buff at the start can really change a battle. Having Lika compared to not having Lika can make your CC land first and completely change the game. It can just... and little things that you don't think about, like attacks interrupting, things like that, it can just change the RNG. So if you are struggling on a stage, and this goes throughout the whole game, not just end game, this is early game, mid game, the whole game, just having that haste buff from Lika, you can have a Lika with no gear, just put that haste buff in, it can completely change things. End game, especially I hear Arena is the main spot for her, just because she gives you that speed advantage in Arena, which is just really important, but it is everywhere anyway. So that is Lika. Also, the one other thing I wanted to mention about her, we're not going to go too in depth, is her signature item, which basically increases allies' accuracy, but then also raises the damage dealt to the enemy target by 0.2% for every accuracy point that is higher than the enemy's max dodge points, and can be raised by a maximum of 20%. So that's really nice if you're using some allies with some high accuracy against enemies that don't have massive amounts of dodge. Not so amazing against things like Kaz, but overall it's just giving you a real nice damage increase with this signature item, and it's just adding to the overall damage of your team. So that is Lika. And my other honorable mention is going to be Chimera. Now, Chimera is, I thought I'd put her in here just because there's a lot of stuff that goes on around there with Chimera, where a lot of people use her early game and she is amazing everywhere early game. And then it gets to that mid game stage and people say, you know, chapter 25 is where she drops off and she becomes useless. I think Chimera is fantastic the whole game, but she just shifts where she is fantastic in. For instance, in a lot of these events that come out, and also in the new Twisted Realm, she's one of the most optimal units in a lot of those team comps that we see from endgame players, if they're not using something like Taylene as their damage dealer. So she's still a fantastic option there. And also, the guild hunts, she starts to become really good as well, because when we're talking endgame, we're talking maxed signature items, and when you consider that her signature item at maxed is really increasing the single target damage she can deal, it's a massive buff, and that's why she is still one of the top DPS for the guild hunts, just due to that fact that she can actually deal a massive amount of single target damage. The reason she falls off in PvP and in campaign and stuff like that is because her damage slows down, and that's where she doesn't become as good. In early game, she sort of just ults and you win. In that later game, it tends to be that the burst damage is more valuable than that consistent AoE. So that is the reason for that. Having said that, in the guild hunts, because there is only the one enemy and she's doing such massive damage, she is still really solid there. So kicking off the actual list with number 5, it's going to be Sofia. Now, once again, this list, it was hard to place an order, so we just went with what we could and we gave them a number. So Sofia is absolutely amazing late game. She's one of those heroes that's fairly average early game, but when we consider late game, we are using max signature items. We'll talk about the signature item in a second, but let's look at her ultimate. Basically, she charges up an energy ball. It takes time. You can cancel it early by manually clicking it and it'll go early, but when it builds up, it's going to do massive AoE damage. With skill ups, you can see it's 660% damage, and that is AoE. That's massive multiplier for single target damage, let alone a small range AoE, so that is really nice. The next ability is Scatterbolt. Sofia fires a magical projectile at an enemy target, which deals damage and then stuns them, and then splits into 3 little orbs once you've got the skill ups, and deals damage to 3 other enemies. Now, the thing about this one that would make it completely OP would be if those little orbs stunned enemies as well. They do not. Only that first big orb stuns enemies. The little ones, they only do bits of damage and that's it. And that is very important, because if they actually did, she would be ridiculously overpowered, because when we look at her signature item, you can see, we'll just read this basically. 1% of Sofia's total damage output is converted into her attack rating. The attack rating can be raised by up to 140%. So then you can see the level 10 and 20 upgrades, it just makes her get there faster. And then when we look at the final one, Sofia will use a Scattered Bolt, which is that ability we were talking about with the stun on the first target, instead of normal attacks once the attack rating increase has reached its maximum percentage. So once she ramps up her damage, she's going to change her auto attacks into this, which means she's going to be stunning one target just non-stop. And that is where it's good that they balanced it and made the split up bolts not stun, because otherwise it would have been crazy. So the next ability, this one basically, she on the frontmost allies, she puts a shield around them. It's 2 little flaming balls that float around. Looks really cool and deals damage. That's pretty much the gist of that one. And this final one is another thing you can never miss when you fight a Sofia in a battle. At the beginning of the battle, she puts like this pyramid around her side of the field, which increases your allies' attacks when they're standing in it and reduces your enemy's attack and their haste. So you can do a lot of play around with this sort of thing. You can use like an Eron to pull them in, a Nara to pull them in, any sort of thing. It's really helpful if they've got a Sylvina and it's darting backwards. You know, you're reducing that haste, reducing that attack, which is really nice, but also increasing the attack of your team, which is giving you that extra damage. So let's just take a look. There is the pyramid going up. You can see now she put the shield on the guy at the top, and there's that Scatterbolt. Now we'll see the ultimate, and then we'll try and watch for a Scatterbolt and just show you how it does only stun the first enemy. So here we go. You can see it hit the other 2, but only that first enemy was the one stun. So that is Sofia. Like I said, not as a great early game, but once you ramp up that signature item and get all the skill ups into her abilities, she becomes absolutely amazing. So that's why she is on the list. Next on the list at number 4 is going to be Eron. Now he just has massive damage and great CC and great basically battlefield manipulation, and that's why he is going to be number 4 on our list for endgame. Let's check out his ultimate. So he combines his 2 blades, puts a tornado that goes around the screen, doing AoE damage. It does good burst damage at the start and then does AoE damage. And with his signature item, this tornado then has a chance to freeze the enemies. And the chances increased if they are already slowed, which we'll talk about his next skill, which has a slow tied to it. And at level 30, enemies get frozen for 4 seconds, which is super nice. Like I said, really good CC. And because he's drawing all the enemies into him, taking a bit of extra damage, he actually gets to his ultimate really, really fast and can basically draw 3 to 4 enemies in and then freeze them. We'll talk about the draw in a sec. His next ability, when attacking, he basically does an Ice Blade attack where he swipes and slows enemies. Then he does a Wind attack where he spears one enemy and knocks them back. It's really nice. That spear attack also does extra damage equal to 15% of the enemy's current health, which means if they're at full health, they're taking a lot of extra damage from it. So it's a nice little burst opportunity. Next up, we have the Vortex, which he's just going to suck enemies in a cone in front of him and pull them towards him. Now, in the general battle layout, this is only going to hit 3 enemies, but you can manipulate it. If they have a Sylvina, you can put him in the back middle, have your weakest cloth wearer in the front, and if that Sylvina is in like a bottom or top position, she'll dart there. You'll end up sucking 4 enemies in. Also, if the top or bottom enemy is a melee, you can do the same thing. They might run into range and you can end up sucking 5 enemies in and grouping them up. And like I said, he's going to draw them in with that. Then he's going to use his ice and wind blade, so he's going to do the AoE slow, which is really nice. And then by the time he's done that, he'll take a few hits, and then he'll be using that ultimate, which is then going to freeze them for 4 seconds. It's a really amazing combo and really great to manipulate the battlefield. And then finally, his passive, he basically increases his own attack rating, gives himself a chance to ignore defense, and increases the damage he deals against enemies with shields, which is absolutely fantastic against things like Lucius, which are really dominant around everywhere basically, and annoying as heck to fight if you don't have this skill. So it's really nice that you can be just have that extra ability to just deal damage against shields. Like it's absolutely fantastic. I love seeing a Lucius shield because I know I'm just going to deal tons of damage. So it's really nice. And there you can see that's his Vortex. Signature items don't show up on the test hero, so you won't see it freeze anyone, but it is really nice. Up to number 3 on the list, and that's going to be Pharrell. Now, this guy, kind of like Sofia, he's really slow early game. He's not too great early game because his skill ups provide a lot of the value that he has, and you really need to get to end game. And also his signature item is fantastic. So he's one of those ones that, you know, doesn't see too much use early game, but then at end game becomes completely amazing. So what we might do is we might come to his ultimate last. We'll start off with this skill. He fires a cursed arrow at an enemy, and then it leaves a spirit on the enemy to attack them for 10 seconds. And then it adds in any spirits which are summoned due to one of Pharrell's abilities will attack the target once every 3 seconds. So when we look at his abilities, a lot of them are related to spirits, and it applies to all his spirits, not just that ability. So this one, when we look at this one, like I said, the skill ups are where the value is. So level 3, any spirits which are summoned due to one of Pharrell's abilities will deduct 15 energy from the target per attack. So that's really nice. If you've ever fought a Pharrell and you're like, why can I not ult? It's because you're sitting at like 95% the whole time because you keep getting that energy reduced by these stupid spirits, which can get super frustrating. So that is that. And then level 4, it gets even better. Any spirits which are summoned due to Pharrell's abilities have a chance to interrupt their enemy's attack each time they attack. So not only are they attacking every 3 seconds, but that attack is an interrupt, which is ridiculous. For me, using a Gwyneth on one of my accounts, which I absolutely love, it really hurts because if these spirits are haunting me, Gwyneth has a long auto attack animation and she'll just keep getting interrupted and basically never attack. So really frustrating. And like I said, those skill ups are where the real value is in that ability. Next up, we have this one, Terrorize. Basically, he's going to max skill. He's going to fear 3 enemies for 3 seconds and put enemies to haunt them. So once again, it's a really good CC at 3 enemies for 3 seconds. And then you're also getting more of those spirits, which are going to be reducing energy and also interrupting them. So fantastic. And like I said, this one as well, the skill ups, the extra enemy and the extra second really do count. The next one here summons an evil spirit from the, basically if an enemy dies, it gets an evil spirit to do the haunting. Now that may not sound too amazing, but once again, it's going to come down to the skill ups. Any spirits which are summoned due to one of Pharrell's abilities will remain on the battlefield for 3 seconds. Yada yada yada. Any spirits which are summoned due to Pharrell's abilities will remain on the battlefield for 5 seconds. Now that's the big one. Getting that extra 2 seconds of your spirits on the battlefield really does help, and it really helps when we look at the signature item, which we'll take a look at now. Normal attacks will cause an evil spirit to haunt the enemy target if a critical hit occurs. So if you're critting, you're going to get an evil spirit. And those evil spirits are going to last for 5 seconds now, which is really nice compared to that 3 seconds. And then if we look over here at the skill ups, basically what's going to happen is you want to get it to 30. It's all just number increases in this one. but the numbers are nice. So attack rating for all enemies is reduced by 3%, and health recovery rates reduced by 10% for every spirit that is haunting an enemy on the battlefield. This can be stacked up to 8 times. So effectively, you can get an 80% damage reduction. It does take time to ramp up and get all those spirits out there. But once they're out there, they got 80% damage, 80% healing reduction. And also, what's that? 8, 16, 24 got there, math. I didn't have it on the spot. Attack decrease. So it's really, really nice. Like, it's just a fantastic signature item for helping your teammates basically slow your enemies down, slows their attack down, slows their health recovery, and you can just really grind them away. So it's absolutely fantastic. And then we take a look at his ultimate. Now, this one is really nice, and this is where he's not as great in like labyrinth runs and stuff like that, because he needs to get all those spirits out and start ramping up the damage. He's not great in the guild hunts either, but he's just so dominant in campaign and PvP. It's nuts. But this one, he's gonna basically do an AoE across the whole screen. And basically, enemies that are haunted by spirits are going to take an extra 25% damage per spirit, which is really nice. But also, after he uses this, the spirit's attack speed is increased for 6 seconds, which is really nice, meaning they'll get those interrupts, and it's just going to be fantastic. So that is Pharrell. That is why he is number 3. He's an absolute beast. And something with his ultimate, we'll see when we do it here, it's hard to represent right now because he is in the middle, but if he starts in like the bottom position down here and uses this ultimate, he's going to end up in the middle. So it's something I want to eventually test with like my Gwyneth team, where Gwyneth if I put Gwyneth in the back middle, she has an ability which is affected by having an ally close range to her. So that is a way you can cheese that type of mechanic and get him to go back to the middle even though he starts down the bottom. I don't know what other situations you can test this in and get some functionality, but it's just something to remember if you are trying to cheese some mechanics or something like that. Into number 2, and that is going to be the Queen of CC, and that is Tasi. Now, she is absolutely garbage in the guild hunts, but completely dominant everywhere else in the game. So that's why I put her at number 2. Let's jump into the skills. So obviously, her ultimate, it's an AoE. She puts everyone to sleep. Really nice. They take extra damage when they wake up. Cool ability, 5-second CC for everyone. It covers the whole screen, so there's no dodging the cone of it or anything like that. Just puts everyone to sleep. Next up, she has this little fairy, which is going to dance around, do some healing to allies, do some damage to enemies. Nothing amazing in there, but yeah, it is what it is. It's a cool little butterfly that floats around. Next one, Tasi banishes the most powerful enemy for 4 seconds. While banished, they cannot attack or be attacked. The thing about this one is, look at the skill ups. At max skill, it becomes 6 seconds of just complete, you can't do anything. And then also it steals 40% of the attack rating of the enemies when they're banished. And I've had situations in Labyrinth and stuff like this where you get a high level Tasi and she just basically absolutely destroys you because she's still in that attack and she does some really nice damage. So it's just an absolutely amazing ability, and you can go into a battle, figure out who she's going to banish, and then adjust your team from that because she's always going to banish that most powerful enemy. Then we look at the teleportation. Now this is an awesome ability. This can allow Tasi to sort of sit in that tank position against certain comps and really just make her manipulate your enemies and really RNG the battle depending on where she teleports. Now, you can retry battles, and if she teleports to the right spot in one battle, you may win, whereas if she teleports to another spot, you may lose. It can be time consuming, but absolutely fantastic ability for campaign to be able to just basically manipulate it and see what you can do. But basically, when she's struck, she's going to teleport away and basically avoid damage. Now, it can only be used once every 6 seconds. However, with the skill ups, every time she's attacked, the cooldown is reduced, and when she does teleport, if she goes to an ally, it'll increase their haste. If she goes to an enemy, it'll decrease their damage. Now, with that, you think you never really want to go to an enemy, but with the signature item, sometimes it can be helpful to go to an enemy because, as you can see, reduces the attack rating of nearby enemies by 10% after Tasi uses her teleportation ability. And then it increases to 30% at max skill. So even though she may teleport towards the enemies and you think she's under threat, with that basically that damage mitigation that she provides by reducing their attack rating, sometimes it's not too bad and she can survive, especially depending on what other support you have on your team. So There's no real worst option on where she teleports. It's just each fight you can keep retrying and see if she teleports behind the right ally and gives them haste, you might win. If not, you get behind the enemies. She may distract them, take some of their attacks, but reduce their attack rating and just basically distract them and, you know, change the battle. So it's really one that you've just got to play around with and test and see what she can do. Now, the awesome thing about her is we'll try and see if we can get it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it off auto, and you can see she's going to attack. I'm going to wait for her to banish an enemy right here, and then you can see I use the ultimate as soon as she banishes. The great thing about her AI is they've programmed it, or not her AI, just the mechanic integration is that if an enemy is banished and she uses her ultimate, it will take them out of banish and put them to sleep, because there's no advantage of them being banished and not asleep. So basically when they're asleep they can take damage. When they're banished they can't, so it puts them to sleep and gives you that advantage. Wrapping it up with number 1 on the list, and that is going to be Lucius. Now, if we want to be real technical, I would have put Rowan on number 1 and bumped everyone down a rating, but because Rowan was on my other list, I wanted to give you guys something to look at. So once again, if you haven't checked out that other list of the top 5, including Celestials, Hypogeans, go and check that out. Rowan is an amazing, amazing hero and would probably be number 1 on this list, but because I covered him on that other list, we're just giving everyone else a chance to shine, and this one is Lucius, because he is just an absolute tanking, healing beast. Fantastic in just basically everywhere in the game, especially in, like, I really like this guy in Arena because he can generate energy so fast and put a shield up and slow down the energy regeneration of your enemies. It's just fantastic. So let's take a look at it. This one, he basically shields his allies and mitigates damage and also heals them. So it's a big shield and it's healing over time while they do have the shield, which is really nice, and it's so frustrating to fight against. Like, you can be just about to win a game, Lucius uses his ult and you're screwed. Next up, Divine Strike. Lucius smashes the ground with his Warhammer and causes a shockwave, knocking nearby enemies over while also dealing AoE damage. Now, this one, it also provides some mitigation at the level 3 skill up, but the thing that makes this ability really good, which it seems pretty average early on, but when you look at his signature item, enemy heroes have their energy recovery effects reduced by 30% for 4 seconds when they are struck by the ability Divine Strike, which is that ability we were just talking about, or if a normal attack becomes a critical strike. So he's going to be able to just reduce those energy recovery effects. And as you can see, at level 20, it reduces them by 90% for 4 seconds. And then at level 30, it removes the majority of the enemy's buffs when used. So it just becomes a really, really nice utility skill for him. And it's just absolutely amazing. When it starts out being not so good, it becomes a really nice ability. Like I said, in those tank wars, if you can get that off, slow down their energy recovery, he's normally going to get his ultimate off first. Next up, we have this one. He basically heals the lowest ally and increases their defense, and the lower they are, it's going to heal for more, which is really nice. Finally, this one, you can see it in the background there. He puts down his big shield, reduces the damage he takes. But the other cool thing about this is when he's using this, he gains more energy when he's attacked. But also they fixed this. This ability used to be annoying. He used to have his ultimate ready and he'd just be standing there with his shield down. Now he will cancel this to use his ultimate. But have this ability with that extra energy recovery, if you combine that with something like a Rowan with his energy potions and maybe put Jura's Call on Lucius, he just can get to his ultimate so quick. It's not even funny. So let's take a look at him in action and chuck it on auto, and there's that heal, there's that shield he puts down, and as you can see, he just generates energy really fast once that shield goes down, and he can just spam ultimates all day. I'm waiting to see him use the Divine Strike, if he's ever going to use it, but as you can see, he's got so many other support abilities, and there we go, that's that Divine Strike, and that is going to reduce the energy recovery rates and also strip buffs with that signature item. So that is going to be it for this top 5 list of endgame heroes. Free-to-play version. I know it's not technically free-to-play because every hero is free-to-play, but you get me. No Celestials or Hypogeans. That's what this one is. So thanks for watching, guys, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.